We're just a minute away to start on time and make sure that we get a bunch of questions from you guys. Everybody's excited for Bill Farmer, the voice of Goofy, among various other things.
Thank you, thank you. Actually, kind of interesting thing that's on now is a commercial, which no one knows it's me, but if you see a Heinz barbecue sauce commercial where they show like all these guys like messing up and they like drop the bottle or get their fingers in the barbecue sauce, and I'm the announcer that says, I say, pitmasters don't make, pitmasters don't make great spokespeople, they make great barbecue sauce. Heinz barbecue sauce, made with the masters. So, you'll know that's Goofy. You know?
Oh, cool.
Well, I think
Trivia that no one knows.
We're already starting, and it's going to be a thrilling, magical adventure. My name is Moises Chuyan. I host a podcast called Electric Shadow. I like talking to voice actors, and I love it when they give me the opportunity to speak with some of my favorite voice actors, especially one who I haven't had the pleasure of interviewing, talking to, and getting questions from the audience for. So if you have questions, get them ready. If you want to ask a question, maybe start formulating one. I really like turning over about half of the time to you guys just go crazy with things. But I wanted to confirm before we started, it turns out that Goofy's from Kansas.
Absolutely.
Just like my mom. I knew I liked Goofy for a reason. It reminds me of home.
I am from a little town, Pratt, Kansas, which is west of Wichita, about 80 miles. And I think our exports were wheat and tornadoes. Little podunk town, and it's so nice to be from a little town because I'm going back this year for my high school reunion. And I'm the only one that went to Hollywood from my class, and I was a weird kid in high school. Well, let's go play a movie star, right? And I did. So I was.
Your John Wayne ain't that good, man.
Well, let me say this, Pilgrim. Was John Wayne okay? Yeah. That's how I started, actually. That was, I think, the first voice that anyone knew that I did. I would do it at high school at high school pep assemblies. We would fight like the Dodge City Demons, and they'd say, get out and do something. People found out to do. So I'd get out there, we're going to whip them demons, so let's get out there and fight. And that was like, a thing. It all started off as just kind of a big joke, really.
What were you into as a kid? A lot of people are fans of yours. What were you a fan of?
Oh, I was a fan mostly. I loved horror. I loved sci-fi. I was, it was like shaking with excitement when I got to meet Ray Harryhausen. All of those, Sinbad movies and, Jason and the Argonauts and all of those kind of movies, stop motion animation. I love that kind of stuff. And of course animation, but it wasn't specifically Disney or it wasn't specifically animation in general. More sci-fi and was my favorite when I was growing up. And we had one theater in town, and on Saturdays we would go down there and they had a double feature, cartoons and everything like that. And I spent, my summers down there just thinking, wouldn't it be great to be in Hollywood? But it's like, Hollywood, you don't go out there, you can't get a job doing that, And so it was never like, that you can do this. It was like, oh, that's stupid, And so I kind of quashed those desires for a long time. But we used to make movies. We would take little 8mm movies. And we made one, I gotta tell you a story. We made one. I can remember the title of it. It's called Curse the Blood of Frankenstein. And so we were going to make my friend into Frankenstein. And we wanted one scene that was like a splatter movie. And we wanted to shoot him in the head with a shotgun, like that. So we were going to make a cast of his head and fill it with pig brains and shoot it with a real shotgun. Well, we didn't know that.
Sounds like it's going to work flawlessly.
Yeah, it just, luckily we got a victim who said, John, would you be our model? We'll make a cast of your head. Well, it'll be cool. So in the real world, they use silicon rubber and alginate to make a cast of your head. We didn't have that. We had stucco. And so we talked him in. No, we just put this on, it dries, we pull it off, we get him.
You're going to be fine, man. Don't worry about it.
Absolutely. We mixed this stuff up, started smearing it on, stuck some straws up his nose, and then in a little bit he's like, hey, this is getting hot. Hey! It's starting to set up. Okay, I think it's dry, and we start pulling it up. Ow! My eyes! You know. And it had embedded his eyebrows and eyelashes in the concrete, and we couldn't get it off. And, what the hell, what's going on? So we're like, well, we're going to have to break the mold. So we get a hammer and we start chiseling this thing away and chipping it off with pliers until we had like two big masses around his eyes. We stuck him in the shower to see if we could get it off, and he lost about half of his eyebrows and eyelashes. I said, now we know, grease your face up and that'll take care of it. He wouldn't do it again. So that was my, makeup prosthetic career down the drain.
You started doing impersonations of cowboys when you were about 15, 16. And at what point did you actually make the jump out to LA? Were there a few steps along the way, or did you just get on the bus and
No,
go?
absolutely not. I was way too afraid to do that. I just didn't think it was possible. Started in local radio. My degree was in broadcast journalism. Went to the University of Kansas, did that. And started getting, asked to do kind of performances. We'd have band breaks in college, and whoever get up and do something. And so I had to kind of write some comedy bits with some of the voices, or we would drive through places like, Burger King, and my friends would have me order and do a weird voice. And I'd like a Whopper with cheese, and Arnold the pig would like a Coca-Cola.
I'm so glad that people in this room got green. I'm with my people.
And so I again never thought of this as a career. So I kicked around in radio for a number of years as a DJ and an engineer and some little. I actually started not far from here, and my first station was in Bonham, Texas. And you know where Bonham is? Are you from Bonham? Or? No one's from Bonham. And it was great because it's a place to be bad. They didn't care. You just play some 45 and do whatever you want to do. And so we'd have like a rock and roll show, and
I do Wolfman Jack. Oh, I do all sorts of stuff. We're going to be playing rock and roll all night long, baby.
And I didn't know there were like copyright laws with these voices and stuff, but people didn't care. And so it was a place to work out little bits and to develop your career in voices. And I did that there. I moved to a little podunk place, Frederick, Oklahoma, I lived in for a while, which is west of Lawton out there in tornado country. And moved back to my hometown in Pratt, was there for about a year and a half, then moved back down here to Dallas, where I actually got out of showbiz altogether for several years, worked at a company called Mostech up in Addison as an electronic technician. Then I was able to get an agent here with all the voices and stuff and start doing commercials around the area. Went to a midnight to 8 in the morning shift at Mostech so I could get the career going. During that time, there was a place on Greenville Avenue called the Comedy Corner. And the comedy club, I went there on a Tuesday night and said, maybe I ought to give this a shot. Maybe I ought to try stand-up. So I wrote a little routine, went up there, and the house comic at that time was a guy named Bill Engvall, who's gone on to great. And so Bill was just working out his routines, learning stuff. And I went up, I can tell you the date, March 16th of 1982. My first night on stage at the Comedy Corner. And Bill said, hey, you did really well. Why don't you come back and start doing this a little bit? So I started going back, and about 6 months later, I was asked to go down to Houston. They had a comedy club down there, and I performed down there, and in Austin, and Abilene, and San Antonio, and Amarillo, and all the comedy clubs were sprouting up around there. So I kind of cut my teeth doing that, and then got married in 1984 here in Dallas. Soon after that, an agent here in town said, well, all the voices you do, why don't you go out to Hollywood and give it a shot? I got an apartment in LA, still doing stand-up all around the place, and about 4 months later, my agent said, do you do any of the Disney characters? And I said, well, I can kind of do Mickey Mouse, and gosh, oh boy! Donald, I can't really, I can go, Of course, Goofy was going to right in the wheelhouse. And out of about 1,200 people that tried out, they liked mine, and they hired me, and they're still hiring me. So it worked.
You've been Goofy for so many people's childhoods and lifetimes.
Yeah, coming up to 30 years, yeah.
That's a heck of an anniversary. Are they going to make you a cake, have a big thing out on the
I
lawn?
think that's all they're doing, is giving me a cake. No, I don't know what they have planned. But also next year is not only my 30th, but it's Goofy's 85th year. And they are planning some stuff.
What a coincidence that is.
Yeah, it worked out. It worked out.
What kinds of parts did you want to go out for when you were looking at a bunch of different jobs that were out there?
Anything in show business. I did a movie here called RoboCop when I lived in Dallas. That actually predated Goofy. So I did some stuff and some television shows and commercials here in town. But you know, you don't really know in this business what's going to stick. And I didn't know when I did the first Goofy audition. They don't come to you and say, "You're now Goofy for life." It's like one job. And I didn't know, and it was a show called Disney's Doggone Valentine, January of '87. And I didn't know if it was going to be, that's the only time. And it was like a month and a half later, they called me in for another one, and then another one. And by that summer, I told my wife, Jennifer, who's still living here, "Come on out, I think this might be something." And they kept calling me, and a lot of people don't know that even as the voice of Goofy, I'm not a Disney employee, and I never have been. I am an independent contractor. I'm like the plumber. I come in, I got a job, I go do it, I go home, and they pay me. That's the way it works.
We got some lines for you to bolt together.
Exactly. Go, horse. Thank you, bye.
We have what we need for the talking Goofy toy.
Yes, exactly.
What's some of the strangest stuff that you've been called in to do? You know, for the licensed stuff, the merchandise, commercials even?
Some of it's pretty easy. Some of it is almost, I've done, toys and things where I didn't even have to go in and do it. I remember I started getting residual checks for a commercial for a thing with Pluto in it, and it was like a bubble thing. But there was a commercial on, and where Pluto bites a bubble, and it's like a sound. And I started getting residual checks, and I said, I don't remember doing that.
And you're starting to get worried. You think I need to go to the doctor. What's going on?
What happened? So I checked, I said, can I keep this money? What's the deal? And they said, yeah, they just lifted a Pluto chomp off of some other thing that I'd done, a cartoon or whatever, and they just stuck it in there, and they didn't bother even having me come in. So I started getting residual checks for nothing at all. Now, on the other side, there are some really mentally tough ones. I had to do a toy where it was like you could get Mickey and the gang like singing you a song, and I had to sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," "Take me out to the ball game," and I did the whole thing, but I had to replace different kids' names in it so that every kid's name would be available when you ordered this. So I had to do like, "Andy, let's go to the ball game. Bobby, let's go to the ball game. Cindy, let's go to the ball game." 2,800 times.
So when people think, "Oh, I'll just be a voice actor, I can do some funny voices," sometimes it is not so easy.
No, it was like I could only do like 3 or 4 hours of that a day, and I was just going. It took me like 9 days to do that.
I lost a week of your life.
And it's weird. There's weird names like Xerxes and Balthazar, and weird little names. Everything they can make. They had a big, thick book of names.
When you were starting out as Goofy, was it already pretty common that you were doing solo recording, or was there still a fair amount of group recording that was going on?
A lot of that. The first series I did was one called Goof Troop. And that was terrifying for me because I was the lead character in this television series, and I go in, and the cast on that was like these top flight Jim Cummings and Nancy Cartwright and April Winchell and Frank Welker and Rob Paulson and and Jenny McSwain directed this, and I was the lead actor in this, and we were all in doing it ensemble. We would get the script. And in that day, we didn't even get a rehearsal. We just got it, went in, and did it. And for those that don't know, we always do the sound first. You do the script first. It's just like a radio play. You read it and then they animate it afterwards. So we read it like a radio play, but with these guys, they don't make many mistakes. So it was really up to me to pull myself up to their level and perform at that level. It was great training, but a little terrifying the first few episodes.
Here, we're going to throw you in the deep end with the Royal Shakespeare Company.
Absolutely, but we got through that. And then with the advent of nonlinear editing, Pro Tools, all of this stuff, now it's very rare that I record with the other actors. A series I'm on F7D or some of the Mickey shorts that we're doing, I go in, I do my lines, Mickey will come in, do his lines, they'll take his best lines, my best lines, edit them together, and create a show that way. And it's easy for the engineers to do that, and that way, in the old days, we all had to do a great take, or we had to redo the whole scene with everybody doing the lines. Now, I can do one line 5 times, and they'll take my best take. Mickey's best take might be take 3, put them together, you get the best of both worlds. And that's the way it's done now.
When it comes to video games, you were part of Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts 2,
Yeah.
Kingdom Hearts. There's a lot of math in this title.
Yeah, right.
As a kid, video games were different. What was it like getting the call for, okay, Bill, so here's what this thing is? Was it something that was easy to comprehend, or that struck you as one of these kinds of, what are they?
I've done a lot of video games over the years, and some of the early, like LucasArts games I've done, Sam & Max Hit the Road, there was one Full Throttle, a bunch of these early games I did a lot of work in. And games are totally different because, with all the branches that the character can do, you have thousands of lines. And so the book for Kingdom Hearts and all of these is like this. And it's not done linearly, so it's like I might do a page on page 8, then 16, 47, 118, go back. And you just do these, and they're out of context. So it has to be, they have to describe what's going on, who you're fighting, or whatever. And
It's punching you in the face.
yeah, and you give in Sorrel, watch out! I don't know out for it, it's something. And also, Kingdom Hearts is unique in that it was produced originally in Japan. So I am hearing the Japanese actor who portrays Goofy in my headphones. I'm looping it back into English from a guy who had studied my way in Japan of doing Goofy. And it's weird to your ear. It's like, ooh, Toshimaka-chan, ooh. And I noticed that the Japanese actor had studied me to learn how to do the voice. He was trying to do all the scoops and things that Goofy does. And the Goofy laugh, which is normally, and he had broken it down methodically into 3 separate parts. It was like, it's very robotic sounding. And they even had the contingent from Japan coming over to the sessions, and some of them don't speak any English. And I actually got, as Pluto, I got one of them going, oh, woof, woof, woof. Oh, that's my goodness. Very bizarre.
Let's get some questions from you guys. I want to try to get everybody who has a question right here first hand.
I'm just curious because I said to you the other day that I love Goofy in the shorts, the Mickey Mouse shorts.
Yeah.
Is there a conscious choice in his voice being slightly different doing those cartoons versus, say, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, or is it all script?
If you've seen the Mickey Mouse shorts, he's more dressed than he was as Dippy Dog back in 1932, because he doesn't wear pants, he's got a tail. I said, okay, this is a little different, and they've also let us do things that we've never been able to do in Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. We could never have, Goofy scooting his butt across the floor. Or he was in a zombie in one, which was really cool. I said, he's going to be a zombie? This is so cool. So we get to do things with these characters we never could before. So it's kind of like a parallel universe in a way. So a little bit different take on the character. Goofy's a little bit more of a country rube in this. And it's just a different flavor. In a Goofy movie, we had to do new things we've never done with Goofy. We had to make him a nurturing father, caring father, show some more kind of sadness, and he's upset that Max is kind of rejecting him and all of this stuff, and he's trying to be a good buddy and failing. He never really had to do that before either. So as an actor, it's a lot of fun to add those, little facets to the character. Now, and I love the shorts because I think the comedy is just brilliant, and it's just a lot of fun to do, to take the character into new territory a little bit. As long as they don't, change the characters, the personalities, and as long as they're essentially the same personality, and so that it's the Mickey and the Goofy it can be slightly different within the same ballpark, and it's just a little different side of the character that you never saw. So it's a lot of fun to do all versions of that. For the 5 and under crowd, the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, we have to kind of tone it down. It's more gentle and stuff, and this is much more raucous and a little more adult, but it's the same old Goof, and it's a lot of fun to do.
Right here.
When it comes to doing a Goofy movie, have you yourself ever related to that kind of situation in the movie that Goofy has?
Oh, yeah.
Find personal touchstones in this silly Goofy doll.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in a Goofy movie, because my son was about 5 when it came out. And so it was kind of a bonding picture with me and him, because he's just kind of figuring out what I did for a living. He grew up in Hollywood, so he knows a lot of my friends are voice actors and actors, so he thinks this is normal. And I remember we were down in Florida, and his granddad once said, "Well, Austin, I got to go off to work. I'll see you later." And he goes, "Well, what voice do you do?" Hollywood kid, okay. And, but I think he was just getting aware of that there was, Max and Goofy, and he didn't know if he was Goofy's son or Max's brother or Jason's brother. Who knows? But, and we saw an early screening of it on the Disney lot. And when we came out of the movie, my son was crying. And I said, "What's the matter, buddy? Didn't you like the movie?" He said, "Well, when Goofy went over the waterfall, I thought that was you." Oh, man. So I knew it had heart, but I never imagined that it would have the longevity it has had, and that the love that movie has had. I mean, in the D23 conference down in Anaheim, we got the whole cast together. We were on stage with like 1,200 people, and Jason Marsden, who did Max, didn't get to sing in the movie. They didn't know he sang, really. And they got fine singer Aaron Allure to do the songs with me, and that's the first thing we did in the movie. But Jason can sing fine, so we rectified that problem and sang the On the Open Road song live in front of 1,200 people. And then we got Tevin Campbell, who did Power Lunch, to come in and sing Eye to Eye live. And we got like a 3-minute standing ovation. It was like being one of the Beatles. It was incredible. And the best thing was that we got like 100%, everyone loved that panel. We got a higher percentage of satisfaction than the Star Wars panel did. And they had Harrison Ford and George Lucas, so I felt really good about it. That was very, very, and it just made me feel great to know that people love that movie so much.
Just to add, that was the very first movie I ever watched.
Really?
Really?
Let's go right here.
What was your favorite line or scene that you guys did?
Gosh, my favorite line or scene. In a Goofy movie, we were talking about that, I love the scene in Lester's Possum Park is my favorite scene. And I got to meet Pat Buttram, who did, Lester, and he just goes, "Here it is," and I got to sit around and talk with him. That was a big thing, because I was a big fan of his from Green Acres and all that stuff, and so he was telling me jokes. And but that scene, for some reason, I really love the most. Gosh, there's been many of them over the years. One of my favorite lines, actually I had to do it about 15 to 20 times to get it right for some reason, was the "How many cups of sugar does it take to get to the moon?" Just to get it right, we had to do it a lot of times. That's a fun one in my dreams and nightmares.
Right there.
So what would you say was your favorite TV show or movie that had the Mickey Mouse getting you started?
Well, let's see. There's been a lot. You know what? One of my favorites is one that it was one of the how-to things. It's how to install your home theater. It's so good. It's like the old throwback to the thing I saw when I was a kid. The beauty of television. Corey Hurd did such a great job of announcing that. And a lot of people thought it was like an old cartoon, and it was in front of the movie National Treasure 2. And so it was in theaters, and I saw it in theaters, which is always a big thrill to hear an audience react to what you're doing on the screen. And that was so quintessentially classic Goofy from the 1950s brought forward. That's one of my favorites. Yeah, I don't do a lot of talking in that one, but it's still one of my favorites. And some of my other favorites are from the new Mickey Mouse shorts. Goofy's Grandma, where I get to be Goofy and Goofy's Grandma. And I was very fortunate to win an Annie Award last year for that particular cartoon. I love that one. I love the one where he's a zombie, because I don't really do hardly any talking in that, but I love Halloween. So that's kind of it. So there's a lot of little fun ones through the years that I like.
As a little follow-up onto that one, a sentimental favorite thing of mine is the entire back catalog of Pixar, and you've been peppered throughout that. You were in Toy Story, you were in Cars.
Yeah, I've always been involved with like ADR, which is like after the fact you're going in and adding little sound effects and voices here and there, crowd scenes, like as far back as like some of the classic ones, Beauty and the Beast. I was, a lot of the villagers attacking the castle, back to Roger Rabbit, did some ADR, but I've done like that, and Hunchback of Notre Dame, I think Tarzan, Pocahontas 2, Toy Story 2, Monsters Inc., Bugs Life, Monsters University, and for a lot of other studios too, Shrek, and most recently it's like the Lorax and Minions and all of these things. So a lot of things in the background, like Beauty and the Beast is kind of fun. I always tell this story that I got to do sound effects too. When Gaston is in the bar and he's singing about decorating with antlers, he throws 3 eggs up in the air and swallows them, and boop, 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 that's me. That's cool, isn't it? My son actually picked me out on Shrek 2 because I did an announcer on that when they were doing a ball at the castle. I said, "Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Princess Fiona and Prince Shrek." And my son goes, "Dad, that was you." And I go, "Yeah, I guess it was."
Right there.
I know you were in Space Jam. If you were given the opportunity, would you do the second one?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I got to meet Mel Blanc back in the Roger Rabbit days. And, he was my idol when I was growing up. And so getting to do some of his characters was a lot of fun. I did Sylvester's Foghorn and Yosemite Sam in that movie. Of those, of the Warner characters, Foghorn's my favorite.
Big old chicken. I'll say there, boy. It's loud. Just do it as loud as you want.
And the least favorite is probably Yosemite Sam, because you just have to rip your throat out when you do it.
I hate rabbits.
That's tough. You do that for 5 minutes and you're...
Me? Yes. How's the voice actor for Max doing?
Oh, Jason, he moved to Nashville. He's doing fine there, and he commutes to Hollywood when he has some things, or doing Max, or any of the other things that he does for other animation or announcing projects. And he's doing great, and I keep in touch with him, and he was almost like my son, really, because he was so much younger. And it's kind of funny, at the Goofy movie reunion in Anaheim, when a Goofy movie came out, my son was 5, and now his son is 5 at the reunion. So it's kind of like a circle of life kind of thing.
How do you feel about the other voice actor for Max from Goof Troop?
Dana Hill. Dana Hill, who was the daughter of Chevy Chase in European Vacation, did Max in Goof Troop. Unfortunately, she had was diabetic and passed away, a few years after we did that series. But she was great and a lot of fun. Great actress, and again with Frank Welker and all these other guys, she kind of set the bar pretty high to pull up your performance to that level.
Having a career that's expanded as long as yours have, other than the technology you mentioned, what have you seen change in the voice industry?
Obviously, it seems more often that they are using celebrities for voices, and I understand why.
None of us like that.
Sometimes it works. I thought Tom Hanks and Tim Allen did a great job as, Woody and Buzz. It seemed to their voices lent themselves to those personalities pretty well. But just to have a voice in there just for box office and just to have a celebrity. You have, Tom Cruise doing a voice that you're not really sure it's Tom Cruise. Well, there's a lot of great voice actors out there that I think would have done a better job. So it can work, it doesn't always work, and quite often it doesn't work. And it's not, they got enough money. You should let the voice actor.
Animation boomed so heavily. I mean, a lot of it on the back of Mel Blanc, but his name was never above the title, was it?
Right, and as a matter of fact, he took his screen credit in lieu of a pay raise once. That's why we know his name. He finally demanded, well, I want my name on the credits, and so he did that in lieu of pay increase. And otherwise, we probably wouldn't even know his name that way.
We didn't necessarily get an exact identification of your favorite Mel Blanc character.
Oh, a foghorn.
Foghorn, period.
Yeah, absolutely, I love that.
You love doing it, and you love the character.
Yeah, I was so happy to be able to do him.
Let's go right here.
I always see you playing as protagonists in Euros. Have you ever played as villains?
A villain? I haven't really done yet. In some video games, I think like an Evil Dead and things like that. I've done some I think I actually did Satan's Dog and Cat. A lot of weird little gravelly kind of characters and stuff like that. I am going to attack, things like that, which are tough on the throat. But not generally. I generally don't get a chance. I would love to. I think everyone likes to play the villain because they're just fun roles to play. Fun to be evil.
Aside from Goofy, what are some of the other characters or projects that you're just as passionate about?
Oh my goodness. Let's see. About any movie, I just love working. So you never know how a thing's going to turn out until you see it later on. It's such a fragmented kind of thing. You go in and they give you your lines and you do 10 lines and then they bring the other. You just don't get a sense of the story. You can say, oh, I nailed that character. Or I think that's going to be really great. But until it's like after the fact, like some of the video games I've done where there's Sam and Max Hit the Road was one of my favorites. It was a real early game and I got to originate Sam's voice. But it was brilliantly written by Steve Purcell. That, I did EverQuest, we did a lot of things. Destroy All Humans was fun. We did...
Well, that sounded sinister.
Yeah.
But I did one of those announcers. They came from outer space.
Those kind of announcers are fun too. I love doing the announcers. But each one has its own, there's very few that I do and I go, I wish I hadn't done that one. But anything with Pixar is a lot of fun to do. Because I know, and you can see when you're seeing even a little scene, you're saying, this thing looks good. And so, definitely the Pixar, Toy Story, Toy Story 2, and, Monsters, Inc., and Monsters University. Those are fun ones. The Cars, all of those things.
And here at the end of the room.
A lot of the characters like Goofy and Eric have been iconic characters that have been voiced for. Is it sometimes hard for you to sound exactly like?
Yeah, voice matching is probably the hardest, especially it was very hard for an identifiable character like Goofy or, Mel Blanc was so well known. Those characters are so well known. Voice matching is hard because you got to fit into that that character very tightly. Otherwise, if it drifts too much, you're getting out of character. You have to constantly watch it and make sure that you're really doing the character. Whereas we have a series on now called the 7D, where on Disney XD, and I'm Doc in that. And Doc has kind of a higher kind of a voice, and he's very intelligent, and I kind of gave him this voice. But I got to come up with that voice. And so I get to dictate on how he sounds and what kind of personality quirks he has, whereas doing voice matching is much tougher because you've got to sound just like that character. And if you're taking over an iconic character like Goofy that people love, it's a lot heavier weight to carry.
Stopped by your booth earlier, and for the next 10 minutes, all I heard was Goofy, 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 Goofy. But by the same token, I called my wife immediately and said, I'm a Goofy. So, who do you get approached by more? Is it younger people or older people that grew up with the characters? And by that same token, what do you get more out of being approached by little kids or older population saying, I grew up with Goofy?
You know, he's a unique character, and the Disney characters in particular are unique in that Mickey was the first talking animated character. 1928, Walt Disney did his voice. And he's still being used all the time. Same thing with Goofy and Donald. These characters, unlike any other ones out there, have this longevity. I've been doing this thing for 30 years, and he's still a popular character. Most characters, you'll do a series, and that's kind of the end of it, and they don't do anything more with those series. And even though they're, classic characters and you remember them, they aren't doing stuff all the time. But I've done about 3,500 different projects for Disney as Goofy and Pluto and the other ones. And it's just gratifying from all ages. I love when little kids come up and all go, and it's funny with kids. They'll come up to the booth, and if they introduce me, this is Bill Farmer, he's Goofy. They kind of look at me like, oh, he's an old weird guy. So I will show them a picture of Goofy, and I'll say, do you know who this is? This is Goofy. I can talk like Goofy. Gosh, this is the way Goofy talks. They get that. Hi, it's funny, And I'll do, gosh, I'm Mickey, or some other voice and everything. Hey, they just go nuts. Now I'm getting old enough, now the 25, 30 years old, I've been their Goofy all their lives. So it's a whole different thing. It's a whole new generation of people. And that's, which do I like more? I like both of it, But I love when little kids recognize it, and I love it when adults have a story. Like a lot of people will say, I couldn't talk to my dad until we saw a Goofy movie. That brought us together. And those kind of stories. And the power of these characters is amazing in that, and I remembered actually a story, because we just lost Muhammad Ali just a day or so ago. And I got to meet him in Orlando in 1993 at a Television Hall of Fame inductee dinner. And I got introduced to him, and I'm like, oh, this is Muhammad Ali. And I told him what I did, and he said, well, do you talk to kids in hospitals? And I said, yeah, Make-A-Wish Foundation and stuff. I'll call them from time to time that want to talk to me. And then he said, man, then you're my hero. And I just crapped. Oh my God, that was the nicest thing anyone ever said. But we get to talk with kids in hospitals quite often, and there's a great story. Wayne Allwine, who was the voice of Mickey for many, many, many years, till he passed away in 2009, had someone that called, and the little child wanted to talk to Mickey, and she was suffering from, I think, leukemia, and her mom said, she's just resisting treatment, and it hurt, and she didn't feel good. And Mickey gets on and says, gosh, when Pluto takes his medicine, he does real well. Well, a couple of months later, we got a little letter from that mother that because of that phone call, the child's whole attitude changed, and she went into remission. And so you start thinking, wow, there's some power going on here. There's a lot of power with these characters and kids. And they're so real, especially when we're talking on the phone to them, that kind of gave me a little more respect for them, I guess, when that happened. And what Muhammad Ali said, that he thought that the important thing was, the first thing he brought up, do you talk to kids in hospitals? Never really thought about it. Yeah, we do, but I didn't know it was that important. So it's kind of interesting to see how important these characters are to kids today.
To get to you guys, I have to follow up and ask you about Muhammad Ali. What was it about him that meant so much to you? I mean, for a lot of us, he was like a Paul Bunyan type mythic hero who actually existed.
Oh, I was old enough. I was like, he just had something. He had this quality. You just knew you were meeting a fascinating, amazing man, whether you followed boxing or not. He was much more than that. He was one of those citizens of the world, and he just, was so charming, and you just liked him. You just liked the guy. And I go back, I remember well when he took the title back in 1965. It was on the same day there was a tornado that went through my hometown. I spent the night with a friend. We listened to the LA Liston fight on the radio. And I've always followed his career from that time on. But getting a chance to meet him was like, wow, that's like a biggie. That's a biggie.
Let's go to you next. Yeah, you're
Okay, speaking of Goofy, how's Kingdom Hearts 3 going?
It's going good. I've done, I don't know how much I can talk about it, but they always go, it's going redacted. Someone asked me, when's it coming out? And I said, probably next year. And then it went online. I was trending for a while. Absolutely. And my guess, I don't know. I get called, the Walt Disney Company. Okay, let me see. What do you say online? I don't know. They don't tell me this stuff. I go in and I go, gosh, So, I have no idea. It's taken a long time for them to get the game out. All I can say is the scenes I've seen look great. And I think everyone's going to be really happy whenever it does come out. Which when, I don't know.
Right here.
So piggybacking off the previous question, was there a particular incident or moment where you had maybe an epiphany or realized that you have had an impact on quite literally millions of people across the world?
Probably early on when the first time I saw Goofy on the screen was the first one we did was Prince and the Pauper, which was a short, it was like 1990, 91, something like that. It was in front of the movie Rescuers Down Under. First time I saw my character on a screen in front of a live audience. And when you do these, you just have a paper, you just have a script and a microphone, and you just don't get a sense of it going out there to millions of people. But when I saw it in the theater, 40 feet high on a screen, and then you go, wow, I'm in the movies. You get a sense of it then, and people laughing and reacting to it, and you just think, I guess this does go out there to all of those people. And that's probably the first time I really got an inkling, hey, this is kind of a big deal. I think I'm going to try and stick around as long as I can with this one, So that's probably when it happened.
One over here. We've got one to close us out.
You said that you used to do stand-up. Do you ever do that anymore?
You head down to the improv?
It's so funny you mentioned that. About 2-3 weeks ago, there was a guy, Stephen Glickman, who has a nighttime show, and they have it's like the old Carson thing, where they have a desk on stage, and they do his podcast from the improv. And I hadn't been on the improv stage since doing stand-up since like 1986. And about 2.5-3 weeks ago, I went down there, and they had several guests on there, and so I was going third, and I found out I had to follow Tom Segura and Dane Cook, who are great comics. And when you're a comic and you're following someone that's better than you, that is much better than you are, it can just spell disaster. Crap, I gotta follow these guys, I'm gonna die. I went up there and did the Goofy voice, and I wrote some material, and I killed. I had a great set, and it was the best feeling ever, because stand-up's a great training ground. It was the best training ground I ever had, because a crowd immediately lets you know if you suck.
Yes.
if you suck and you go up there and you, hey, how you doing? Little crickets and stuff like that. It gets really long. You're like, oh, I got 40 minutes left. What am I gonna do? But it's great training ground, and it's the best ever because you get feedback from an audience. You find out how to tell a line, how to tell a joke. And that can only happen by getting that feedback with an audience. And I always tell, I have students and teach students via Skype and in my studio at home. And what I tell them all the time, and what I got is advice from Dawes Butler, who was a great voice actor that I took classes from when I first went to LA. He said, you know, you're not just doing voices. You are an actor. It is voice acting, not voice acting. The character, the voice is like, you know, it's like a guitar. You can give someone a guitar, doesn't make him a guitarist. You can have a good instrument, doesn't make you a good voice actor. It's all the acting. So any time you can get in front of an audience and do a play or be on stage and get that feedback from an audience, that's where you really learn to be a good actor. And so that's my advice to people who want to get into this business. Take acting lessons. Get out there, get on stage, and just do it.
I've got one more for you myself. Anybody else have one? I promise it's good. Okay. You mentioned Dawes Butler, and
Yeah.
I've spoken to Andrea Romano about
Yeah.
Dawes Butler and how profound effect he's had on so many people in the VO industry. Whether him or someone else, is there a particular voice director or mentor who has really profoundly changed your life and pushed you into the direction that you found yourself in now for 30 years?
Well, they've all kind of given their own push in different ways. Of course, Dawes was probably the biggest influence.
Dawes did the voices.
He did all he did all the Hanna-Barbera ones like Yogi Bear, hey Boo Boo, and Hexter, Stage Left, Snagglefoot, Bubble Louie, you know, it's his quick drama draw, and Captain Crunch. He is the voice of Captain Crunch on all the commercials. And that was kind of his regular voice too. And he was this very soft-spoken guy. And a friend of mine said, you ought to take classes from Dawes Butler. I'm saying, D. Dawes Butler? And I said, yeah. I called him up. Hi, well, come on over. And, well, read some stuff, and we'll have a good time. And so he had, a lot of people started with him. Nancy Cartwright was a big student of his in the beginning. And he was the one that really taught us your actors. You can do a character with a funny voice, but it's not the funny voice. You are acting. You're adding character and life to these characters. And the acting is key. He was definitely the one that got me going on the right thing. Jenny McSwain, who directed Goof Troop, was a great influence too. She kind of she demanded, boy, you got to just nail it, and it was kind of like trial by fire. Right now, Kelly Ward, who's directed me all through the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, House of Mouse. I mean, it goes back to that. Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, and now we have a new series, we're in the Roadster Racers. We're in the middle of right now. He's directing that, and the 7D, he directs that. He's really a great director and is a lot of fun. Probably the most fun I've ever worked with a director. He gets how I work, and he's very good at giving me specific directions. Because when you're in the booth and you're talking to Mickey, where's Helly, Mickey? You've got to kind of know, how far is Mickey away from you? Why are they talking? What's going on? If Goofy's pants are on fire, you might say, hey, hey, Mickey! You got to know the situation. And he's really good at setting up the scene. Okay, Nick, they're in a race car, they're going around, he's kind of spinning out on an oil slick, and whoa, 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 whoa! And it gives me whatever mental image that I need to do the scene. And when you can connect like that with a director, that makes the world of difference to an actor.
Well, a couple little housekeeping notes. Jim Cummings' panel after this one has been canceled. He has to catch a plane. Scheduling is sometimes that way, so I'm sorry if you were hoping to hang around for Jim. I apologize on his behalf. I host a podcast called Electric Shadow, as long as Bill's fine with it. I'm going to be using a good chunk of the audio from this panel in an upcoming episode. And oh God, I've hosted so many things this weekend, so it might be a couple months. But let's hear it one more time for the legendary Mr. Russell.